To get started adding our own blocks and items to the game, we first need to understand the concept of registries. Registries are a collection of objects that we want to make known to the game. There are built-in registries for items, blocks, entities, and more. For more advanced implementations, we can even create custom registries. For now, we will focus on adding our blocks and items to Minecraft's built-in block and item registries, respectively. To do this, we create deferred registries for our mod's objects, based on the existing Minecraft registries. Then, we can define and register our own objects. Lastly, Minecraft's blocks and items need us to specify how they are rendered. This is done via a data-driven approach where we create JSON files that specify render configurations. For items, the client item data decides which item model should be rendered at a given moment. For blocks, the block state data decides which block model should be rendered at a given moment. Now, we'll walk through this and create some example objects. Inside of the main package for a mod, where we already have our mod's main class, we're going to create a new class called blocks. This is going to house all of the blocks we decide to add and register. Inside of this newly created class, we're first going to define the deferred register used to register our mod's blocks. We'll call this blocks. Use the deferred register.create method. You can either use the create method and specify the registry. The way to do this is to look for Minecraft's built-in registries for blocks, and then add your mod ID that we have already created a static field for. If you want to simplify this, NeoForge does provide a built-in helper method for this. It just takes the mod ID. Next, we need to actually register a block to the registry we have just created. To do so, we're going to define a static holder. Now, a holder is a way of referencing some registry object. In our case, it's going to be a block. We'll call this bluestone. Call the register method on the blocks registry we just created, and this will take two arguments. The first one is the name. We'll call this bluestone. The second one is a function that actually provides the instance of the block. In our case, we'll just create a new block. The block takes block properties, which we can create a blank one, simply using this. Now we're missing one thing here, which is every registry object has to have the ID set. We can do this by setting it within the block properties. We'll call .setID, and we're going to create a new resource key linked to the block registry, and this should take in the resource location that defines the name of our holder. To do so, we're going to make sure that this supplier here is actually a function that takes a resource location, and we can provide that to our setID method. You can also define additional properties for your block here. If we have a look, we can see that there are many different configurations we can add. Now we will do the same process, but for our items. Create a new class called items. This could be called whatever you want, but it's nice to organize it. We'll make a item registry, deferred register of type item. Call that items. And again, there's a very nice helper method. Just provided the mod ID. And now we can register an item. This is very similar. We create a holder of type item, call it bluestone, and to our item registry we call register with the name and a function that creates our actual object instance. Again, we take in the resource location. We create a new item. Our item takes a item properties, very similar to the block. And again, we must call setID. If you don't do this, you're going to experience some errors. Currently, This code has no link between the item version of this block and the block itself, which is when it is placed in the world. To do so, we need to make a small change, and instead of creating just a generic item, we have to create a block item. The only difference here is that the constructor takes the block it's linked to as the argument. So what we will do is look for our bluestone block we've already declared and get the value of it from inside of the holder. Now, when we hold the item in our hand, we're actually able to place it and produce the block version of it. Now back in the main class for our mod, the Learning the Ropes class, we need to register those registers that we just created. To do so is fairly simple. We reference the class and the deferred register within it, and we call .register, providing the event bus that our mod class has access to. We repeat the same thing for the items. At this point, we've completed the registration from the code side of our mod, but we still need to provide the data in order to actually provide information on how to render these blocks and items. Let's have a look at the block render data first. Inside of our resources folder, we have our assets folder, and then the folder titled the namespace of our mod. Below that, we need to create a new folder called block states. This is where we will define all of the block states for our blocks. Inside of that, I've created a bluestone.json file, and this has to match the ID of the block you want to target. If we open it up, we have a very simple block state defined. What this does is apply this block model to all variations of this block. This doesn't mean a lot at the moment, but we'll go into how to do further block states at a later point in time. In addition, we also need to define this model itself. We've done that under the models folder within our namespace. And inside of that, we have a block folder and then the bluestone.json definition for this block model. We can see we have it parented to the cube all Minecraft block model, and what this does is a very simple model that applies a PNG texture to all 6 of the faces. And we have defined that texture in this block below, and this is referencing a PNG that I have inside of my resources. We can see that over here. Now, the item is very similar. If we open our items folder inside of our mod namespace resources, we can see we have another bluestone.json, and this is defining the client item data. If we have a look inside, it's very simple. We are defining one model to use in all cases. Now we can go ahead and look for that item model we've created. Inside of models, item, we have our bluestone.json. This is an item model that very simply parents to the block model. In this way, when we hold the item, it looks like a small version of the block in our hand. Some items have a static texture as their icon, and we will discuss other ways to do this later on. Now, to render every block, we have 2 data files that we've created. And to render every item, we also have 2 data files that we've created just now. As you can see, this gets somewhat cumbersome when you're doing lots of blocks and lots of items. And of course, Minecraft has a way to tackle this, and we'll cover this in a future video, but all of these data files can be procedurally generated through code, and that will be covered under the data generation video coming up soon. Now, if we launch the client from the build configurations in the top right of our IDE, we should be able to boot into a world and access our item. We don't currently have a creative tab, so we need to use commands to give it to our player. So we'll give it to the dev account. You'll see right at the top we have the autocomplete, Learning the Ropes, Bluestone. Give it to ourselves, we'll see we have that beautiful item model, and we can place it in the world and see what it looks like. In the next video, we'll talk about how to make the block drop itself and also how to add it to the creative tabs.